During the third age of the sun, 5 magicians known as the Astari were sent from Valinor to Middle-earth. These 5 magicians, each a Maya, were tasked with vigilance against the potential resurgence of Sauron, and, if necessary, to unite the peoples against him. However, one of them hesitated. This individual was Olorin, who would later become known as Gandalf in the world. Hello everyone, and welcome to Middle-earth Tales. Today, we'll explore why Gandalf was afraid of Sauron. In Valinor, a council was summoned during a meeting with Manwë to discuss what actions to take if Sauron returned. Manwë wanted to send 3 emissaries to Middle-earth, but it was unclear who these 3 would be, given Sauron's power. Initially, 2 names emerged: Curumo, chosen by Aule, and Alatar, who attended the council under the command of Orome. Then Manwë inquired about Olorin's whereabouts. Olorin had just returned from a journey, and was at the end of the council when he asked Manwë what he required of him. Manwë expressed his desire for Olorin to be the 3rd emissary to Middle-earth, citing Olorin's friendship with the elves, who had once journeyed to Valinor and survived its devastation. However, Olorin explained that he felt too weak for such a task, and voiced his fear of Sauron. Manwë insisted that this very fear was the reason he wanted to send him, and commanded him to go without further debate. But why did Olorin, who would later take on many names including Gandalf, perceive himself as weak or inadequate, especially when told that the emissaries would be equal in power to Sauron? To answer this, we must look at Olorin's life before he became Gandalf. Olorin was one of many Maiar residing in Valinor. Like all Maiar, he served one or more of the Valar. While he spent time with Manwë and Varda, he primarily dwelled in Lorien's gardens, or with Nienna. Lorien was the master of visions, dreams, and desires, and his gardens were a sanctuary for all the residents of Valinor, even the most powerful, to rest and rejuvenate. Nienna, on the other hand, was the Vala of mercy and sorrow, known for lamenting the marrying of Arda by Melkor. Given that Lorien and Mandos were known as the Masters of Spirits, and that Nienna was Lorien's sister, we can deduce that Olorin's primary skills were related to the spirit rather than the physical realm. In other words, Olorin did not spend time with Aule, the master of smithing and the earth, Orome, the hunter, Tulkas, the wrestler, or Ulmo, the lord of waters. Instead, he was a thinker, not a man of action. When Olorin claimed he was weak for such a task, he likely meant not only that he was less powerful than Sauron, but also that his talents were ill-suited for the mission. Curumo and Alatar, the other 2 chosen, were assistants to Aule and Orome, respectively. It makes sense that Olorin, as a thinker, would feel inadequate compared to their practical skills. However, Olorin was also considered the wisest of all the Maiar. While wisdom may not seem sufficient for such a daunting task, as events would later show, it proved to be the most crucial quality of all. So, why did Olorin, immediately after deeming himself insufficient, fear Sauron? This fear was not due to his abilities. He did not claim to fear Sauron because of his deficiencies. Instead, he expressed his fear as a distinct concern. Let's explore the reasons for this fear. One reason is undoubtedly that Sauron was one of the most powerful of the Maiar. We can compare Sauron's power to that of Eönwë, the herald of Manwë. Both were among the strongest Maiar. However, in one aspect, Sauron surpassed Eönwë, his experience with Melkor. No other Maya, including Melian, spent as much time in Middle-earth, fought in as many battles, or reigned as extensively as Sauron. He knew all the significant peoples of Middle-earth, their leaders' strengths and weaknesses intimately. Sauron was not only powerful by nature, he had been tempered in the fires of war, making him even more formidable and dangerous. Thus it is possible that Olorin feared Sauron's power and experience. While Sauron was forged in the crucible of conflict, Olorin lived in the peaceful gardens of Lorien. On the other hand, Olorin was also a mighty Maya in his own right, and as mentioned, the 3 selected emissaries were meant to be equal to Sauron. Perhaps Olorin didn't need to fear Sauron's power as much. This would hold true if they were in Middle-earth with their full powers. However, the emissaries were not allowed to bring their strengths from Valinor to Middle-earth. They had to relinquish these powers and take on mortal forms, interacting with elves and men on equal terms to earn their trust. They would appear old, and this was not merely superficial. Although they would not tire as quickly as actual old men, they would still experience fatigue, need rest, feel pain when injured, and even face hunger, thirst, and death. Sauron, however, faced no such limitations. Though he was not as powerful as when the world was young, he remained close to that level. Thus, Sauron had centuries of experience in Middle-earth, inherent power, and Olorin was deliberately sent with a significant reduction of his own abilities. All these factors seem sufficient to justify his fear of Sauron. However, Olorin's fear of Sauron might be much simpler. He may have feared the physical pain and suffering that could result from falling into Sauron's hands. As a close friend of the elves, he must have known how Melkor tortured them. He likely understood that Sauron, Melkor's pupil, also derived personal pleasure from inflicting pain. Olorin could probably imagine the horrors Sauron would unleash on someone sent by the Valar, especially if they were deliberately weakened. Therefore, his fear could stem from a natural concern for injuries and death that all living beings share. Now, let's take a step back and try to answer another question. Why did Manwë insist on sending Olorin? Was Olorin's hesitation the real reason he wanted to send him? What advantage did Manwë see in Olorin's lack of self-confidence? The reason for requesting these emissaries to relinquish their powers was not only to allow them to communicate with elves and men on equal footing. It was also to prevent them from becoming corrupt and turning into a new force that could dominate the peoples of Middle-earth, much like Sauron had done. After all, Sauron himself was a living example of the problems an overreaching Maya could cause. This is why their powers had to be limited, ideally causing them to fear Sauron. The Valar did not want these emissaries to confront Sauron in direct combat. If they did and won, it could lead to the emergence of a new figure akin to Sauron, though not named Sauron. Instead, the Valar intended for these emissaries to oppose Sauron by uniting and mobilizing the existing peoples of Middle-earth against him. In this way, any victory would be a collective effort, preventing the rise of a new tyrant. When you think about it, the Valar's plan was both ingenious and ruthless. They sent individuals that Sauron would undoubtedly consider enemies, or at best rivals, stripped them of their powers, and left them with only one path to survival, uniting the peoples against Sauron. In the end, we see that the Valar's concerns were justified. Despite all their precautions, they could not prevent Saruman's fall. What could have happened if Gandalf hadn't rallied the Rohirrim and defeated Saruman? This is a topic for another video. So, that's all for today. Remember, these conclusions are my own thoughts, as Tolkien never explicitly wrote about Gandalf's fear. If you have any insights or disagree with anything I've said, please share your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, to make YouTube happy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Until we meet again, take care.